Thanks for coming to the final of this year of 2021, the Yoga Disability and Transformation workshop. And this is one where maybe after I give kind of, unfortunately, probably a rambling preamble. My name is Matthew Sanford. If you don't know, I'm the founder of Mind Body Solutions. After kind of a little bit of a preamble, I hope we can kind of get a sparkling conversation going. So this is the fifth in a series of 5 online workshops where, in general, Mind Body Solutions made a decision to try to keep raising not only the voices of people living with disability, but also the message that we want to get out to the greater culture. So today is hopefully getting to a discussion that helps us create a working document that we have a couple of our staff people taking notes about the things that are said today, but I'll talk about that in a second. So I want to just quick go over the names of the other workshops we've done and then kind of a clarifying idea. So before we do, just start to feel for a second, let in a little bit, sit up straight and tall, start to feel more rather than less, because today especially, we need to be articulate and a little bit focused. So let that exhale happen. Let it ground a little bit. As you're doing this, so the first workshop we did was Who Says That Can't Be Free? And it was a discussion that I thought was very powerful about that freedom doesn't mean freedom from constraint, that freedom is only known through constraint. And this is particularly true for someone living with a disability. I mean, the barriers that are going to be in our lives for people that live with disability are going to be in our lives, right? And the question is does that mean I can't be free, right? That I do not believe, and that's what that first workshop was about. The second one was what to do about sympathy. So for those of us that live with a disability every day, we are awash and surrounded by all different types of projection onto what it's like to live with a disability, onto a lot of times the way our culture avoids the truth of certain of disability and the fact that we're all only temporarily able, is to feel sympathy. And so that workshop was a lot about what do you do with that level of sympathy? How do you live with it? How do you keep your boundary so you don't feel like you have to fight against that, but you also don't have to wear that? There was another one about the difference between allowing and accepting. Now, this was a subtler, more nuanced one where clearly when you live with a disability, you're asked to accept a whole bunch of things. But I was trying to, in that one, articulate a difference in agency between accepting what the world is like and instead allowing it to be how it is, and that it's a work in progress. Which I think is a very important distinction. I think, you hear things in our culture now called radical acceptance and trying to make it a very powerful word. But I have this notion that we also just have to not feel like everything has to be accepted, but there's an allowing for the culture to be kind of messed up, and that changes our position. And then the last one was finding your voice. That was the last one, and that was about what are the things, what does it mean to find your voice in a way that you don't have to fight for it in relationship to other people and to this culture? Because once you're fighting for your voice, you've already lost it, right? There's I think a deep insight there. And just so those are the topics that were covered. If you're interested in watching them, they're online and you can access the recordings of them. They're you all have said some very interesting and powerful things during those workshops. And And so this is like a thing I said in one of them earlier this year that I think is so powerful. It's from Kevin Kling, and I want it to be a frame for what we're talking about today. And that is that he refers, Kevin often, who lives with a disability and with PTSD, he refers to a reference to Dante in Dante's Inferno, where Dante knew that disability didn't mean inability, that the prefix dis actually means traveling through the world of shadow and reflection. So rather than disability being a word that means inability, one of the general themes that I've wanted to try to get across this year and us to explore together has been that disability is earned ability. That in fact, that it's wisdom. And one of the things that I want to try to get going today is the idea that what wisdom would we share with others in concentric rings in our worlds, that instead of that is wisdom. Like I believe, and this is something I fundamentally want to change the position of people living with disability from having to, let me say this, I want to say this, from wanting, instead of asking from the culture what we think we deserve, to getting the culture to recognize the value of what we have to share, which is different, right? The way I like to think about it a little bit is once you put me in a line where I'm having to register complaints about society or about people around me, I've already become disempowered. That the fact that I'm put into that line means that I'm already outside and undervalued, right? And the way I'd like to try to bring this up is with the line in the description: until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero. Okay, so, and this is where I want to today call on all the wisdom in this, on this call, to think about what guiding advice would we give to different layers of the people around us in our culture, based on the fact that we have something that in fact our culture needs, not just that what I need the culture to do for me, right? And this, I think, this turning on the head of means that the lion, think about the lion for a second. If I try to convince, if I'm the lion and I'm trying to convince the hunter not to hunt me or to shoot me, right? What an absurd position I'm already in, right? Where I'm saying like, well, wait, I'm, and this is gets to some of my personal reservation about putting disability awareness on a platform of civil rights, solely on civil rights, or solely on the platform of it being a moral issue. Because once it happens that way, I've already been disempowered in an interesting way. This is my personal thought. And so what does the lion say? Oh no, I'm really a good entity on the planet. You should actually care about me, right? Or hunting is bad. You shouldn't be that. Or if you treat me that way, if you kill me as a lion, you as the hunter, the world the hunters created, it's a morally unjust world. It's like all that is all true, except I don't think that's the best way to tell our story. I think that, but we do have to tell that story too. So I want that story to be out there, but I want us to get better and better at exploring what things would the lion say. Not having the lion's story be defined by whether or not, to use the tortured metaphor, that the trigger or the gun is in the hands of the hunter, right? Like, so what does the hunter actually need from the lion? And if you ask me, living with a chronic condition and the wisdom that arises with living out of a condition where you don't get to have all that you want, where you don't get to, where you have to be all sorts of things, as I want to talk about in a second, that what wisdom comes from living with the situation that we're in, does our culture need? And not to get too far down this rabbit hole, I think that, for example, global warming is a chronic condition. That we're in our lifetime, the people on this call, it's not going to be solved, right? I think that racial injustice and lack of equity in our culture, it's not going to be done overnight. We're in a whole culture of chronic conditions. What do we have to share that could help people realize what are the things to pass on, right? That the wisdom that we've all earned in the world of shadow and reflection. So along these lines, I want to open with one quick question and one more fun question that I would like you to take a second to ponder, sitting up straight and tall and using your body to help you think. And especially the second one, but the first one, and write these in the chat box. Just to get your this is like kind of cracking your knuckles before you play piano. What's been the hardest thing for you to accept as you live with a disability, a trauma, or a loss? Now, try to give the deepest answer you have. Because I can tell you one thing about the lion story, it's going to have to be truthful. Deeply truthful, undeniably truthful, right? Remember, a complaint already has an agenda, right? And we need truth here. So please write in the chat box. And, like for me, one of the hardest things that's been for me to accept is that I feel like I live in a world that most of the people around me don't see. That's a really hard bridge to know that, and even when I try to describe it, it doesn't work. So that would be one example. So I'm not seeing anything coming in the chat box, but I wish you would think about, because acceptance is one of the things where constantly is preached to us, right? Right. And I don't want you to give up too much when you think you have to accept too much. Right. So whatever you might put in the chat box there, because this is the precondition. You don't have to write as much because that's hard to write in a sentence or two. Because what I really want you to ask yourself right now, as a framing exercise for this conversation, what I really want you to ask yourself right now is, what superpower have you attained because you live with a disability? So Kevin Kling tells the story about an 8-year-old girl that is very shy, and she thought her shyness was a superpower. So when he went around in this class, and asked each little kid what was their superpower. This one girl said that I'm shy. And he went, what? He goes, well, because I'm shy, people forget I'm there. I become invisible. That makes me know everything. Right? So one of my superpowers, I think, is that I can be incredibly patient, or I'm an expert at processing disappointment, or that I really know how to listen to another's suffering without being afraid of it. Right? I think these are superpowers. I think patience is a superpower. So take a second and write it in the chat box. Could be, those are just examples Because a story to be compelling needs to be unexpected. Something needs to be revealed about the experience of living with a disability, not just that it sucks, because it sucks, right? What's your superpower? What have you learned? Maybe it's within your family dynamic. Maybe you occupy a certain role. Maybe you're the ones that people come and talk to about their hard things in their life. Who knows? But until we can capture our superpowers, our story as the lion's not going to be good enough. Right? Again, I don't want to find myself in the complaint line only. I've already lost. All right, so it looks like we're getting some superpowers in there, which is a more fun question, right, than what you had to accept. All right. Let me try that. I'm just gonna take a quick look at some of those. I don't feel I have superpowers. Oh, yes, you do, Clementine, for God's sakes. You just need someone to help you discover them. This is from Petrus. I facilitate for people who wouldn't have cared otherwise. To seem caring according to social cliches. My superpower is I am undeniable. See, I freaking love that. Wouldn't that be a great superpower? Holy crimes. Oh my God. D. Zubel, endurance. Are you kidding me? That's all of our superpowers right there. That is a superpower, is endurance for sure. Empathy for others, absolutely. Again, because we know what it is to suffer, we're not afraid of other people suffering. One of the greatest limits to empathy is that people think they'll get annihilated by feeling what's happening to others. Not true. This is a huge piece of wisdom for this culture. We'd rather choose fear rather than recognize the experience of others. Fear and judgment, fear and denial, all these things. Resilience is a superpower, absolutely. In the process of adjusting to my life in a wheelchair, I'm noticing how easy it is for me to take in societies wanting to pass over. There are people who need extra help. So I recognize deeper and deeper parts of myself, absolutely, right? Self-awareness and what you expect. You know, one of the things that I think too, and keep waiting a minute, these are great. Calm insight is in there. Coming up with creative solutions. All of these things. Because yeah, creative solutions, like, think about that. All the things that if you know the show, MacGyvered to get through your life. I mean, for God's sakes, give me chewing gum, some duct tape or whatever, and I'll figure something out, right? I could stick something together and hold something together. Oh, I like this one. Because I am on the autism spectrum disorder, people always know that they can always come to me for the unadulterated truth. That would be correct. These are good. Compassion, resilience, finding another way to do. Oh no, Jessica Fleet, paranoia and hope. Holy crimes, that is super. I would have to understand better. There's got to be a story as to how superpower of paranoia is a superpower. I'm sure it is, but that's like makes me very curious. These are great. Grace. These are awesome. All right. So along these lines, does anyone want to jump in and elaborate on their superpower? Get it going. Come on, I'm going to call on somebody. I know a lot of the people on the call. Better for a volunteer. It's okay to say you have a superpower, by the way. Doesn't make you a megalomaniac, right? Anybody? Come on.
Okay.
Okay, good. Catherine.
I guess it's an interesting way of looking at how I feel so shy and hesitant to speak up as being a superpower. So my willingness and ability to look at things that everybody says are a certain way, and we all in a society, we agree that that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But I'm coming from a different perspective.
So like your outside perspective's a superpower?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I have this kind of attitude as the movement of equity and inclusion is taking over every HR department in the world, right? I want you to pause. I want the world to pause and wonder if I actually do want to be included in the mess that is our culture, right? There is some power from the fringes, right? Like there's powers, because isn't it funny when you go around your life and you're watching it, and it's kind of like when you watch people fall over themselves or whatever they're trying to do. It's like watching a cartoon sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness, right? And as long as that judgment doesn't get dark from me, then I'm in a good place. I let that get dark, that superpower transforms into isolation.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to want it to be funny and not cruelly funny. Right. Like, kind of like, don't you love Ted Lasso? Even though he's kind of, you watch Ted Lasso, I hope. Watch the show Ted Lasso, please. Does anybody? If you don't watch Ted Lasso, you got to watch Ted Lasso. You just got to. He's a bumbling, innocent idiot that's wonderful and deep. All of the above, right? Anyone else willing to talk about their superpower? Bill, I'm throwing you under the bus. I know how well you speak.
You're cruel. I just came back from an event where we launched the first for sale in this area of an adaptive and aging in place house. We built it. We are selling it on the street, and we're building 2 more. So I'm a little bit tapped out. But I was thinking about 2 things. I wrote creating a safe space, which is inclusive in a lot of what you said, but being able to allow people to be vulnerable. I find the first third of a relationship with somebody, I'm deflecting their defensiveness. They're worried about what they say, how they say it, but to be able to just keep stepping back with them because they're trying to figure out how to engage, but giving them space to continue to work through it is a huge gift. And you mentioned all the components that go into that, but then having a voice, we have a voice that is undeniable, as somebody said. You get in front of a politician in a wheelchair, you got their ear. And I was telling a lot of people, because they're asking questions that I had to, answer it, that they were, gosh, that's a great question. And, anyway, it was the same question over and over again. But to have a voice and to allow somebody else the freedom of having their voice, that one just busts down those, because it's all about, can I see you as a human being? And it's scared to see your future in somebody else and not be scared of it, especially when you don't want to acknowledge it. But anyway, I'll pass on that.
Yeah. So Chris Scherf, you're on here, and I want you to, hopefully you can hit your unmute button. You've got on here, my disability, it doesn't define me as an individual. My superpower is diplomacy, okay? Which I find all of us have probably learned diplomacy skills. Chris, are you on this? Can you unmute yourself? What do you mean by diplomacy? Because when you don't waste words. Like, to me, you say like amazing things.
Well,
it sounds like chaos in the background. There you are, Mr. Sherp. What is it you mean?
Well, what I mean is that I have to find ways to keep my all too often I want to respond to somebody trying to make me feel better with sarcasm and resentment, but I have to find a way to turn it and express it without trying to beat them over the head.
So I get it. So you're saying that pause that comes with wisdom, right? The one that
Yes.
like slows it down. That is a definitely superpower, one of which a lot of us have had to master for sure. And anyone else that wants to share a superpower before we go on?
Me,
Yep. Speak up.
since the last seminar, I was thinking about. I'm from South Africa. I'm thinking about ancestry. That my country people are. The religion is ancestral, and I was thinking if it could apply to my disability, if I have disabled ancestors or an ancestry of disability, and I thought back, like the village cripple. There's a lot. There's so much. I've got Esmeralda. Is my friend. Then I thought about Esmeralda because I was tripping on that for a while. Of Victor Hugo at another character, a priest in Les Miserables, who became a good person because of a good deed that he did. He did some. He has there's a story, and then he became a good man because of something. There's a story to it. Esmeralda was immediately good. She met Quasimodo, and that is what goodness means. He's the barometer. He's like the difference between village and no village. Is that so? That's what I'm still thinking, and I'm still, but there's so much that just keeps developing in this way of thinking.
I think you put yourself, you put your finger on something really important. I mean, there's the village idiot, there's the actual village clown, there's and those are typically voices coming from the outside. The jester is another one. Like in mythology and in our stories that we inhabit and inherit, pardon me, there are going to be placeholders of what, Patricia, you're talking about, I think, in whether it's your direct ancestry or the role that comes, the satire or also the wisdom that can come from the different perspective within the norm is actually a crucial voice for our culture.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Kevin Kling talks a lot about the importance of clowns. For example, that clowns in this country means one thing, and in Europe, clowns is a much more powerful idea of what it is to put a mirror back on the society from an outside perspective. So that'd be fun if someone were to ever research that a little bit more in what you're talking about and try to figure out different stories. I might put Kevin on that one because he loves stuff like that. That's great. All right. So given that we're kind of feeling some superpower, I hope. So my hopes for this document is not that we give a whole bunch of shoulds and shouldn'ts. And, this is going to be a working thing that my MBS will find for a home, and I will maybe revisit it a few times, trying to get it out. So here's one layer of concentric circle, which may be the hardest for me at least, it probably is. What piece of advice would you give to your family about interacting with you that they don't actually know? What do you wish your family would get differently? So don't worry, hopefully your family members aren't listening right now. So let's get it out. Let's get it. So, does anyone have any ideas about that? Because that's the first ring, right? And it would, and it's not just because, I mean, it's true in any family dynamic. I know these are hard questions, but that's the point, right? There's a reason why the lion's story remains flat. It's because there's a lot of work to do, right? Do I have to go first again? For God's sakes. Of course, I've had a little more time to think about it. I'll throw one out there that's really general. They need to listen more. Like actually listen all the way. And a lot of times, because they love me so much, right, that they are worried about not doing, you know, like they're listening. They already know me really well. So, and they have their ideas about me and about what I'm saying and why. But in order for the conversations to be transformational, there's a level of listening. And this doesn't just happen because I'm in have a disability. This happens for any family. What if families actually listen to each other without trying to empower too quickly, without trying to fix it? My God, I suck at not trying to fix things, right? So like that idea of, you know, no, let's have a fresh conversation about this, or a new conversation. That's one idea. Anyone else have anything? Bill, I almost see you raising your hand, man.
Actually, I was talking to my wife across the table.
Damn it.
But you know, you're on something. Yeah, there. How to relearn really loving one another, and that's just a hard place. You know, we can start with physical to emotional to spiritual. It doesn't make any difference. It is a hard place. You know, quite frankly, you know, over the last couple of years, I've had some you know setbacks, as we all do, and you know things change. The energy in me changed. The energy I have, you know, towards you know a lot of physical things are really hard to come by because the noise level in the rest of my body takes up so much bandwidth and so much energy just to get through. And how do I relate that in a way that, and my wife is sitting across the table from me, that they can understand it, and it isn't rejection. It isn't you know dismissal. And so I mean that's just one huge relational piece. I mean, we all need and want to be able to express and receive love, but how do you communicate it when you've got languages that are just so starkly different and apart? You know, and like you said, there's not words for a lot of what we experience.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this too is that my mom, who might be on the call, I'm not sure, she has a superpower. She is an unbelievable listener. Okay. And so I've benefited from an unbelievable listener, right? Although she wants to make everything better for me because I'm her baby boy, you know, I'm the youngest. But it's like that this is like one of the reasons why a listener is so important is so the person can find their voice. Because I don't know about you, there's certain things, truths that I'm afraid to, it's not just my family, but people I love, I'm actually afraid to say because there might be rejection or it might not be understood. Right? So the idea, and then so the idea of a listener isn't just because the person should listen to me. But when you listen to another human being, you help them find their voice, right? Because I'm not going to say things. My poor mom has listened to, honestly, 42 years, but so many years of me trying to figure out the vision of mind body solutions and why I do it. Like the poor woman has been talked to ad nauseum with me trying to figure out how consciousness flows through disability, right? And it's an amazing gift to give, but there's also the empowerment part of having a listener. It's like, well, when I say no, don't you wish no could actually mean no when you don't want help? You know, I mean, like there is like that side of the listening too. What else might someone say to someone close in? It doesn't have to be family, but close in. What piece of advice would you give, or guiding insight, or a guide?
I was gonna say something to that question actually, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really hard question, but I think for me it was like my family were really good at sort of taking care of all of it, and our sort of, I think, kind of communal pact was that we would all do it together and we wouldn't tell anybody else, so that I wouldn't have to show the rest of the world that I was too vulnerable, or I wouldn't have to ask the rest of the world for fear that I would be rejected. Or so we kept it kind of like a secret between us. And in my adulthood, it was really hard for me as an adult to ask for anyone else to do anything for me, because I was like, I'm supposed to just keep it between us. Like, these are the people I can ask for help, but outside that, I'm not supposed to do that. You know, it was kind of like they were the ones I was to go to say, well, we'll help you with that, but you don't have to tell other people that you're struggling with that. So I tried to camouflage it to the rest of the world. You know what I mean? And so I suppose to them, I just, you know, it's okay if everybody else knows that I needed it. You know, they were trying to protect
That's
me.
such a profound thing in an internal family dynamic, like what you're saying, because like that you shouldn't need to ask anyone else for help. Well, as you know, as you live through your life and you fall, I'll never forget a few years ago, when our studio was in Minnetonka and it was winter, I was wheeling across quickly to Lakelands Co-op, and there was a puddle and I didn't know how deep it was, and I hit the puddle and I flew out of my wheelchair right at the turnoff from Minnetonka Boulevard in the parking lot, and this great big truck almost ran me over when I was out of the chair. Like, he turned in and didn't see that there's this person on the ground there, right? And that guy jumped out of the van, saw me, and if they got, he was a great big burly guy. He basically just picked me up quickly out of this puddle of which I was submerged into, right? And just thought, like, basically picked me up, threw me on my shoulder, and put me back in my wheelchair. And it was like a moment of like the amount of gratitude. And he was horrified, right? But there will be situations where you absolutely need help. Right? Like, and that's a superpower, is being able to ask for help.
Yeah. And it's one that is really hard to foster, because when the message is like, let's not do that, all of us together, you know.
Right. It's an interesting thing. That's an interesting thing in a family dynamic. There's a beautiful line in here from Colleen, as advice to her loved ones: if I fall, let it happen. Don't try to stop it. Which would be so hard for my mom to hear, for example, right? And even me as a father of a 21-year-old, like, the falling can have all sorts of meanings, right? And it's like, wow, that's a great piece of advice to a family. And see, now you putting that in a document, a working document, that I would love to see created, that's creative like this. That line, if I fall, let it happen, is itself already a story, right? It's not a piece of advice directly. It's got double, triple, quadruple entendre. That line has a face with a view. That's a line from David Burns. I guess this must be the place, one of the best love songs ever written. You have a face with a view, right? Right. And it's like, that's a line that is like way open-ended, and a beautiful statement of a piece of advice that goes in so many directions. And some sort of wonderful statement, if someone could come up with it, that'd be great, about this thing that Laura's saying, right? not just it's okay for me to ask for help, but like there'd be a, what if we could say that not as a prescription, but even though it's as if you fall, let it happen, it sounds like a prescription, but it's not. It's way more subtle than that, and supple than that, and graceful than that, right? Like that would be a good one for us to noodle on. Like, how do you, you know, maybe it's as simple as asking for help is a superpower, let it happen, right? Or something, I have no idea. Anyone that has ideas about how to phrase that one, that's fantastic advice. Here's a good one, Carl Kropp. Assumptions can be dangerous. They tend to pigeonhole people. Absolutely. Can you imagine day in and day out how many assumptions were completely washed in? You know, I still, I mean, there's so many places. So how would we say that positively as the lion, right? I'll go to buy something and I'll be with someone and they won't talk to me when I'm the one that's going to be paying for it. You know that thing where they ask the person that's standing. But by the way, I'm not completely stupid, so it's like I actually can follow how conversations and but how would we say that? Like this idea, assumptions are dangerous. They are, but what's a way to phrase that? The idea there, because we pigeonhole, right? In a way that says it in a way where if you just tell the hunter that he or she is bad, they're going to shut down. If you just tell the hunter that he or she has done something wrong, they're going to shut down. If you can tell the story to the hunter in a way that they realize the value for themselves, you've got the beginning of transformation. This gets back to, if you put me at the complaint window, I've already lost your ability to self-realize as the hunter, right? So this is a great one, but trying to figure out to say that, I mean, we've heard the joke, don't make an ass out of me or you. That's all in the word assume, right? I think that's from The Odd Couple, by the way. Did you ever see that? Way back, that was a whole show was about, from The Odd Couple, that comedy. I don't know if that's where it came from, but it goes back a long ways. But how could we say that in a way that's like, don't pigeonhole me yet? That's exactly right. You know.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, please.
So a positive way to put this is to say, please allow me to be the way I am and trust me to know that I will ask for help if I need it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I think that we should, and by the way, for people that are watching, a lot of people watch this on replay. And even if you think later, write to info@mindbodysolutions.org if you have ideas. Like, in a way, I'm getting too poetic in my head right now. I am what I am, and it's okay. Right? Right? Like, which is like a statement of empowerment. But I wonder about the assumptions. There's another piece to that I don't know how it would be said. So I'll be noodling on this working document, by the way, because I think there's some really good challenges here.
But to say to people, please allow me to be the way I am, is a way of answering that question about how to say to people something without putting them down. It's a positive step instead of a criticism.
Yeah. Anyone else got any ideas there? Because this is a tough one, because there's another piece that, please allow me to be where I am, that is got an implicit thing about assumptions. You see that? Yeah, there's something about it limits not just me, but it limits the world, right? That's what I keep thinking, like there's something about this truth that's really general. It's like, judge me at your own risk, you limit the world, right? Which might be a funny way to put it, right? Louise, you got your hand up. That's awesome. Thanks for it takes a good Brit to actually follow the rules of decorum, right? This is good.
Well, I think what you said it. I mean, I would say to the hunter, if you make an assumption, it's going to be a very small ending.
That's a great one. A small ending. See, now that's a way to put it really smart. If you assume it gets a small ending, or if you make an assumption, some version of that. See, I've
Yeah.
never heard that, Louise, that it's a small ending.
Whereas if we don't make an assumption, we can have a much bigger, welcoming thing.
Your
Or-
assumptions guarantee
or-
a small ending.
Or even maybe not an ending at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love this. See, leave it to the damn Brits, right? That's why we have to have you keep coming, Louise, because it's like the wisdom, I love this idea of small endings. Can you mind if I just steal that?
You can have it,
Like,
Matthew.
I just love that idea that you just created a small ending, right? Well, aren't there a lot of places you'd like to just say that out loud? You just created a small ending. Okay. Let's have this just and I love that. So I'm writing that one down for myself. I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. Anyone else? That's awesome. Anyone else? No is a complete sentence. I like that one too. Right? Straight to the point. Well, Annie Hickman, who I know, who is one of our students that also is a teacher of kids with special needs. I find it easier to accept help from students for the rest of the world. For the rest of the world, I try to look like I can do it. Isn't that interesting? How about a way of saying that with this? Again, I'm in the wrong. Vulnerability attracts. Right? You see what I'm just saying there? That's too obtuse, but meaning that if you can be vulnerable and I can be vulnerable, we're going to end up helping each other. Right? That's what I'm trying to get across somewhere or other, that vulnerability is not an illness. That'd be another one. Right? Like that, the idea that vulnerability, well, I say it when I'm in a training, I'll say vulnerability is a precondition of realization. It sounds really philosophical, but vulnerability is one of the binding agents of our interactions, if we're honest. I mean, part of what's so hard with something like COVID is that people who are not used to feeling vulnerable are now feeling vulnerable, and some want to beat their chest in relationship to this invisible thing and say, I'm good, I'm invulnerable still. Some people are going too far into the fear of it, right? Vulnerability is a very difficult energy, and it's part of the energy that we actually make clear to the culture. In our vulnerability, they are afraid for themselves, right? I don't know. This is an interesting one. Some comment on vulnerability would be or a sentence on vulnerability would be a good one, right? Maybe vulnerability is a superpower, right? I don't know. So I hope you'll keep thinking about these things and write them in, so we can try to create, my hope is to, after this meeting, create a 5-point document that has 5 condensed lines of that we're trying to do. Laura, you got your hand up. Another.
Yeah, because
person
Louise
from
put
across
manners
the
on
drink.
me. She
What?
put manners on me. That's why I thought I'd better do it. I was just gonna, when you were saying there, thinking, I think we is a very good word in that, it's, for me, it's easier to accept help or do something like that if I feel like it's a team, someone's entering into it with you rather than doing it for you, or
Mhm.
I think when it becomes more like a team effort, then you feel less disempowered by that.
Yeah, I think
You know what
there's
I mean?
really wisdom to that.
Yeah, and I think you both kind of get to feel the vulnerability of okay, let's give this a try and see if it works, rather than I'm doing this for you or you're doing it for me.
That's interesting. I was thinking I wrote this down, we is a good word. That line has a lot of legs to it, right? That sentence. We is a good word, the need for help is universal. Right? Because that puts it in terms of, there's a line there, right? That gets because the truth is vulnerability is universal too. right? Like for sure. One of the McRae's wrote, "I am stronger than people can imagine." Isn't that the truth? They assume to you about you that you're kind of fragile, and in fact, you've already been through things that most people around you can't imagine, right? I mean, there's definitely truth to that. Okay, so I want to switch a little bit because we got to practice a little bit of yoga in a while. So that's to people close in, but those are also really good advice to the culture at large. And maybe there's no big difference between the two, between saying it to someone, a loved one, or saying it to a wider culture. But before we go to the big general one, what advice would you give for healthcare providers? Because most of us that live with some level of disability are taking trips through the factory of medical science more often, right? And I know all of us have had both dehumanizing and empowering interactions within healthcare, right? So Bill Sweeney's got his hand up.
I'm trying to show a little restraint with this one, having been in the hospital 9 days in the start of October. Just to can we look at the whole versus the part? It's impossible to communicate to most of Western medicine, and if you get a surgeon, it's never going to happen. I mean, it's hard to find them to come out of where they stand, and we fix one thing and screw up 15 others. And but anyway, can we just start looking at the being versus the part?
Yeah, I think that actually could go not only to healthcare providers, but also, and I heard that line, like, in how the world looks at me. Could we look at the whole rather than just the part that you think is lacking, basically? Like, so like this idea as a piece of advice, look at the whole versus the part. Like that could go beyond healthcare, like in a big way, right? That's a really good one. I do, and this is related to something I think we were talking about before, Patricia Cole, which I really like this one. It's also important for people to understand that I don't spend every waking minute thinking about my disability. That just cracks me up because that's exactly true. Most of the time I'm just living my life, however that unfolds. Yeah, like in a way, I put on my pants one leg at a time too, even though I live with a disability. We usually say that for really famous people, right? But it's like, actually, most of our lives are pretty similar. I eat food and I do this and I do that. Anything else for healthcare providers though? Come on, I know it's there. You got stories that are smoldering in there.
I would say don't let, I'm at school, so this is a very quick on microphone moment.
Yep.
Just because you don't fit into the boxes that already exist doesn't mean that that there hasn't been the right box built yet.
Yeah, that if I don't fit the box or your protocol, right?
Yep.
I'm about to say that. So Annie, knowing I can give you a homework assignment, right?
Yep.
Figure out how to write that in a sentence that we could put in a document.
Okay.
Right? Just because I don't fit it in the box or get in the pigeonhole, right? Doesn't mean that means the box isn't created. That's not about me. Like if you have a diagnosis that falls through the cracks, I'm just not talking to Annie, right? That means that your diagnosis list isn't enough. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with me, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yep.
Yep. So I'm just going to give myself a note about if I don't fit in a box, make a new one.
Yeah, or I'm just more highly evolved than everyone else because y'all haven't figured it out yet.
Yep. And that's a good one. Create new boxes. I'm going to put that down. If I don't fit in a box, create new boxes. Anyone else got any advice for healthcare worker or the model or whatever?
Matt, there's a couple good ones in the chat. Leanne says, ask more questions. Laura,
Sean says vulnerability is the birthplace of being. Ask more questions. That's a good one.
mhm.
But you know, don't you wish the questions could be sometimes I think I wish your questions were slightly more graceful. So like ask more graceful questions. Or I don't know. But when it's someone tries to make it too soft and I feel like I'm being patronized, so I guess I'm probably unpleasable with it. The only questions I love are from little kids.
Yeah.
I love how freaking honest, like when a 4-year-old comes up to me and asks me a question about something, I just think those are the best questions I've ever heard because they're so honest. I like ask more questions. I'm writing that down.
Well, and I agree with you that many questions can be very patronizing, and I wasn't thinking I was doing it in as few words as possible, but
Right.
it's really, I was trying to get more to the learning piece than, it's not the questions of, what does that feel like, or what happened to you, or those kinds of.
Yeah, those are invasive. Yeah, but except it's funny because I usually accept questions like that because I want them to be curious, right? Because curiosity is going to be what brings part of their transformation, right? Because I think we want the lion to figure out, and I hate to put it this way, but to try to get the hunter, pardon me, to stop hunting, somehow I got to figure out how not hunting is in his or her best interest. Right? That's part of the story I want them to recognize. Right? Unfortunately, because I think in this culture, at least right now, we're pretty self-interested. Right? Ask more questions. Anything more to healthcare providers, or is that a dead end? See, I thought there'd be more ideas here.
Lori has something saying, think about the advice you give. Is it actually advice that you would follow? Often it is not.
I like that one. Would you follow your own advice? That's the note I'm writing to myself. If you don't give it. Would you follow your own advice? I like that one a lot. JD, I see your hand up.
Matt, hi. I have so many doctors that I go to, and I wish they understood when they send me to yet another specialist that this is a whole nother set of tests, a whole nother set of medications, and another set of follow-ups. And frankly, I've gotten to a point where I am just so sick of medicine and doctors and specialists, and I just wish they would just almost like leave me alone. Just let me go. I'm doing fine or something. I don't. Except I wouldn't be seeing doctors if I'm doing fine. But
exactly, yeah. It's interesting. I think that's probably. I mean, when you hear about the revolutionary approach of the Mayo Clinic, right? And you think, oh, they just say, basically, we do interdisciplinary consultation, right? And you think, oh, that seems obvious. Shouldn't you always do that? Well, the fact is they don't do that.
Well, they
right?
don't.
So you have one of the, if not the best research, the best place to be diagnosed in the world is simply because doctors talk to each other.
Right.
Right. As opposed to, and it seems like, duh, how couldn't every medical system be set up that way? But apparently that's an innovation.
Well, but those are all specialists. They're all outside of that guy's office.
Right.
So you go to I go to the University of Minnesota. Well, they obviously have specialists there, but they aren't all connected. They're in buildings all over the place. And
Right.
So you're sent off to go see these pulmonary people or whatever. And it's just like, oh, Christ.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder, you got to figure out how to write that in a sentence though.
Yeah,
or two, or a paragraph.
Good luck with that.
That's true, Michael.
I'll think about
anyone
that.
else to healthcare professionals? Okay, so you're out and about in the world, wheeling for me, it'd be wheeling, managing your way in a crowd or in grocery shopping or who knows what would be your guiding advice? What do you, I think we've already named a whole bunch of things actually here in this. But any other pieces of advice? What I love about what we've generated so far is that they go into every category, right? For the most part. But what would you say?
I had a nice one in it was actually not mine. I stole it from someone else, but I was getting into my car and this little kid was really staring, and the mother said to him, "Don't just stare at her, say hello to her and smile." And I thought that was a great direction. Like, she didn't freak out and go, "Stop staring at her." She was like, "Don't just stare at her if you're going to do it. Just smile and say hello." And I thought that was fantastic. That she
Okay,
didn't
I
scold
think
him.
that's a great line
Yeah.
to the culture at large. Like, I'm just writing that one straight down. Don't
I
just
thought it was
stare, say
lovely.
hello and smile. But in a way, it's even better that's a parent to a little kid or to a
Yeah.
little kid,
That she
right?
didn't
So in a
scold
way,
him
that's
or
a
yell at
story right
him.
there.
Or yell at him. She just said, interact with her and don't skulk at her. And I
Yeah.
thought that was nice.
I think that's fabulous. That's a really good one. That's another line with a view, especially when put forward to a little kid. You can imagine a little kid hearing that, right? That's one of the wisdoms from Kevin Kling. When he wants to say something really hard in a story, he usually puts it in the mouth of a child, right? Another real great storytelling device. I do see Petrus ready, hey, as advice, spend 2 years in India. That's a good one. Anything else besides I love that one. Any other things?
Patricia writes, advice to the culture at large: interact with me just like you would with anyone else. Don't go out of your way to interact with me or not interact with me.
Yeah. So I hope that's being captured. A lot of times I think of it as like respect goes a long way. Right? Like where, it's amazing what a powerful energy human beings have mastered with respect. Respect that doesn't have to be grounded in fear. So to me, like, that's how I hear that. It's like, don't go out of your way to see, I like that. Geez, that's a whole different edge though than the respect thing. I'm taking my notes here. Interact with me. Can you say that again? I'm not seeing that on the thing. Interact with me or don't, or what?
Yeah, interact with me just like you would with anyone else. Don't go out of your way to interact with me or not interact with me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone? That's a good one.
A lot of what we're talking about is advice that could go well for society as a whole. As you walk up to a Black person and don't just stare at me, say hello, or don't put me into a box and say, "Oh, you're that guy," and judge me. No, I'm not that guy. You haven't even opened your mind up to who maybe I am. And I think that's all over society. It's not just disabilities.
But that's what I think is so important about the lying telling the story, right? Is that what you will find is that the wisdom that comes out of living with a disability actually is going to apply very broadly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That there are going to be cultural and systemic wisdom coming out of our experiences. So instead of thinking, once I'm put onto a platform by the way, I really think that ADA is a fantastic thing and got passed as a civil rights movement. But once you put me in the position of having to talk about this as a right, the deep, profound wisdom that comes out of our ability as traveling through the world of shadow and reflection gets lost, right? Because there is this general applied wisdom that comes out of our experience, which I think is
I get
captured
what-
on the
I
chat.
get your lion now, that you're saying that we have a vision of society that other people can't see because of our situation, but it applies everywhere, and we can teach the hunter and say, no, wait a minute, here's the truth about all of society, and I'm no different than anyone else. But
And I think that that's the kind of wisdom that turning it around,
yeah,
that's when the stories are going to get transformative,
that's good.
right? Is
That's
is
really
that when
good.
they're seen more broadly and more deeply. I mean, obviously, if the lion convinces the hunter not to hunt, to continue in the tortured analogy, it's not just lions that benefit from that.
Right.
It's everything that's hunted.
It's all of society.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's just such an important need.
So we're the teachers.
That's part of what I want to say. We shouldn't be in the complaint line.
No, at all. We're the
Right?
ones
We should
that
be in the
can
other
teach
line.
it.
We should be in they should be in line for us. And that's the part.
Right.
And there's sometimes where it does need to be civil rights, and I do need to be in the complaint line, but I at least want there to be two freaking lines. That they're in line to talk to me, and I'm in line to get my voice recognized and fight for it, right? And that's the switch that I'm trying to get going in this conversation. I do want to switch to a little bit of practice, right? I think, and hopefully I can process this into the other thing I know, this is cynical, that if our document gets too long, it's not going to get read, right? So if we can figure out pithy ways of saying some of the things the way it was said, that's what the document needs to be, a face with a view, as opposed to a prescription, right? And that's part of what this conversation was trying to get at. As we switch to a practice, and please, as you think about this, because I'm going to be ruminating on it, keep writing to info@mindbodysolutions.org, just ideas and lines, because because we need your collective brain power, to be honest with you, right? The lion needs all of the ways of putting it. But I was thinking about, my concern, which didn't happen at all in this conversation at all. So things you worry about, not things that happen. I don't want to create a working notes or document that is just complaints, right? Or as a bitch session, because I don't think it's as effective. But I think it's an important part of the process of finding those pithy lines that have a face with a view, okay? And I was thinking about, does anyone ever read the book? It's really intense and hard and wonderful. The Things They Carry by Tim O'Brien, about coming back from Vietnam and what a Vietnam vet carries. Okay. Yep. It's an amazing book. He's from Minnesota, and he's a great writer, right? It's a really good book. And it is a fiction book, by the way. People think it's a memoir. It's a fiction. It's a fictional book. But I do think that there is, in order to generate the type of document that I would love our Mind Body Solutions community to generate, there does have to be an acknowledgement and a peace be made with the things that we carry. All those interactions, all those things that you had to absorb, some negative. The other thing that's wonderful about living with a disability, in my opinion, when I can keep my eyes all the way open and not get offended, is that I also see the very best of humanity in a way that other people don't. Where I'm really glad I'm not a police officer, for example, because they often see the very worst of humanity. right? Like we get access to the good parts of people's hearts too. That needs to be part of the lion's story, right? So as we hold the mirror back to them, it's not just heavy stuff, but there are the things that we carry. The moment where the guy picked me up out of the puddle that might have saved my life, I have no idea, right? And that a yoga practice can be a cleansing practice. Okay, so all of us have a lifetime of carrying stuff. And it's not so much, in my opinion, in my experience with yoga, it's not so much do the poses change me? Am I strong enough to let yoga change me? Am I open enough to not wait to see how I'm changed, but to allow? Because the wisest voices are going to come out of us as we learn to cleanse the things that we carry, right? To let them get more air, to let them be irrigated with water. Because at the end of the day, the transformation between anecdote to artfully told story is a crucial one. And as long as the lion only tells an anecdote, the story won't have as much life, right? And in order for us not to just tell the anecdote, we have to like do something with the things we carry. So sit up straight and tall. So one of the things that's been kind of hard about this conversation is that you've had to kind of really think through your life and through some of your interactions. So put your hands flat either on your lap, on a table in front of you. Take time to find where your feet are. Feel where your sitting bones are. One of the things that asana does is gives you structure from which you can feel the empty spaces that you carry. Okay? And the empty spaces carry the memories. Right? So by being aware of my hands, my feet, my sitting bones, and I lift my chest, I let my chest lift be a transformation for the things that I carry, right? And act. And as soon as I lift my chest, of course, my breath gets a little better. There's more space for me. So in order to cleanse, I have to aerate, I have to make it more open in order for me to cleanse. So asana gives you a way to do it. It's not just that your mind that has to cleanse. So one of the things that is incredibly cleansing is your exhalation, right? So they want you to, when you're trying to like cleanse or detox, they want you to drink a lot of water because then a lot of water comes out of you. It's literally a cleansing, right? Same with your breath, right? So you give structure and you pay more extra attention to your exhale. I'm trying to access the things that I carry. I need to soften my jaw, the inside of my mouth, the struggle I carry as I navigate through my life, right? As I have to manage 24/7. So I let the space in me be opened and grounded by my body. help you figure out how to exhale mental content. The things you carry from your day and from your life. It doesn't mean forgetting them. It means cleansing them so the story can change. Allow that the lift in your chest is a symptom of hope. So rhythm in movement moves the empty spaces. So I want you to come forward, lean forward, right? Can you let, this movement to the front edge of the sitting bones, right, be strengthened by the lift in your chest? So lift your chest, right? And then go the other, it's a little bit of cat cow, right? So you lift your chest, so you're bringing a rhythm, right? So I'm going back, I'm concaving and convexing my back. So this next time I've started deepening it, so I'm not just doing that, now I'm lengthening from the sternum to my chin. I'm making that more aware. And then going the other way. I'm not as good at curling. Maybe you are, right? I'm better at emerging, right? But I'm going back and forth. I'm going in and out of the world, right? When I'm concaving and convexing my spine, right? So when I'm convexing, I'm closing my eyes, I'm letting myself round inward. And then I watch the process of emerging with my spine into the world. And then I go back to what's hidden, right? And then bring it out, right? Then I'm going to sit up straight and tall. And I'm going to go back and over the back of my chair, like letting now this energy is way different when I go back and do a back bend, right? Up and over my chair. Now I'm going to come back to neutral, and then I'm going to convex, feeling what that feels like, that inward when I'm rolling in, concave my back, open it up, convex, go inward, right? As I'm leaning forward, as I lift my chest, which is very different than coming back to neutral, going backwards behind the balance point, up and over my chair into a back bend, opening my chest. So this energy of this back bend is very different than come forward to this energy of this back bend when I'm forward. They're very different. They cleanse different things, right? Come back to neutral. Feel your inhalation. This time on your exhalation, inhale and expand. Last time, exhale and hit down through your sitting bones and extend out to the top of your head on exhalation. To help you do that, on this next breath, inhale, and then exhale from your back ribs and lengthen. So you're sitting alert. You're taking that deep breath to touch the inward space and then extending that energy back out into the world, right? Good, and then come forward. Feel this emerging. Go back to the back of your chair, go up and over the back of your chair. Feel how different this feels. And then come back to neutral. The truth is, you want all of this work with your spine. One more time, roll forward, go inward, You're leaning forward, open up. Go back, hit the back of your chair, go up and over. And then come back to neutral. So twists are thought to be particularly cleansing, right? And if you, and then one of the common images that's given in asana is that you're wringing out like your dirty dishcloth or your washcloth and your sink, you're like squeezing out the water. So inhale, get spacious. So go down, take the left arm up. So you're creating and moving those spaces. Keep those spaces as you exhale, let go, right? But keep the space and then inhale and inflate them again. Remember, we're trying to move the things that we carry, right? You're allowing that you might be able to move your body and change how you carry your thoughts from today or their imprint. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. So lift under the collarbones, right? Roll the shoulders back, come on back to center, right? One of the things that if you do a lot of twisting, so inhale, take the other arm up, make the space, right? Make space for the things you carry, turn, you actually inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve, you revolve your spine to squeeze out the dish rag. Good, and then release. Now, we're not gonna do this, but if we were to twist back and forth really fast, we're gonna do a little bit. Inhale up, exhale down. Take that behind you, revolve. Back to center. Inhale up with the other arm. Exhale, revolve. Lift under the collarbones. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Right? Back to center. Be in the center. Find the center. Inhale up, make the space. Exhale, revolve. Lift under the collarbones, roll the shoulders back. Back to center. Inhale up, exhale, revolve. Right? Lengthen the spine, make the spaces. So you're moving the space. And then come on back to center. Sometimes twist like that, like 40 times in a row, you'll start to sweat. Like twists eventually bring out your water. That's part of why twists cleanse, right? Is they literally create a certain kind of heat that cleanses and burns off stuff, right? So sit up straight and tall and just feel for a second. But I want you to cleanse and twist not just your body, so that's the physical component of twisting, right? I want you to think about twisting the spaces you carry. Again, so you're gonna go back to being really mindful of or aware of all of you, right? Inhale up. I'm going to take a couple of breaths here. I'm going to try to open my rib cage. Feel my sitting bones, feel my feet. Don't be in a rush, right? Exhale, move all the spaces with me. Inhale, grab my chair behind me in the place that feels right. Then I'm gonna like squeeze that dish rag together, but I'm not gonna squeeze the crap out of it. I wanna use my breath, my inhalation to expand my spaces, my exhalation to squeeze the space and let the air out my nose release the spaces. Because remember, your breath touches both your empty spaces and your tissues. It does both. Good, and then come on back to center. Inhale, take the other arm up. Exhale down. Again, I'm making the spaces and I'm turning the spaces, not just in my body, but the room. The empty spaces in the whole room. I'm transforming by opening the spaces and making them move. Good. And then come on back to center. Be in the center. Convex. Lean forward. Concave. Convex. Find the deepest part of your inward part by when you roll your shoulders forward. Find it. And then transform it by lifting your chest while leaning forward. Then go back over the chair, get the support of the chair, use gravity instead of fighting against it, come on up and over the back of your chair. And then come forward. One more time, come forward, lean into the world, bring the world with you. Help it emerge by lifting your chest out of your seat. Come back. Open it more like a celebration on the back bend. And then come on back into center. And then without twisting so much, grab I'm grabbing my seat between my legs, taking my arm behind you, and I'm doing a real gentle twist. Not as much of the twist. Just feeling it. And then I'm switching hands here. Using rhythm now. And then I'm going back and switching again, making this as fluid as I can. Just a few, just gentle, rhythmic, side to side twists. And then come back into center. Find home. That place from which the lion's story is going to be the most truthfully told. The great thing about storytelling is you don't have to tell things, you can show things. And then do what you need to do a version of Shavasana. So I gotta change my position. I lean back into my chair. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Until you tell the story, you don't even know your story's most important parts. Until you have a listener, you don't know the most important parts yet. Soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. Thank it again. Start to bring yourself back Slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes and let the light in. If it's too much, close them again. Choose your own timing. Open your eyes again. I really want to emphasize in this work of helping people deepen their awareness of the lion story, choose your own timing. When you want to do it and when you don't want to do it. Right? Really important. Because if you don't do that, your story won't remain as true. Right? It's got to come from just the truth of it. Even if the story is a made up story, and I had a writing teacher say, fiction actually has to be more truthful than nonfiction. Because once it becomes inauthentic, the reader will know. All right, everybody, I'll stay on after. We do after hours to continue the conversation, but I wanted to almost end on time, only 2 minutes late. So those of you who want to stay, I'll stay. We can keep chatting some of these themes. Otherwise, everybody, thanks for joining, and I'll get something together and somehow we'll send out something when I figure out how to process this conversation. Right? Hands together. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.